Oh, correction. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Good evening. Good evening, friends. Good evening. We're having a challenge here. Good evening. Good evening, friends, and welcome to another Tuesday of Inspiring Beyond the Pain live video. Welcome to another Tuesday evening of Beyond the Pain live video. Just trying to make sure that we are on Instagram as well. Something is not going right on Instagram this evening. Um, I hope that we're able to also go live on Instagram as well. So, for those of us who are joining on YouTube and Facebook, good evening and welcome. It's good to be back here. Well, praise the Lord. Thank you. It's good to be back here again today on this last Tuesday of January. It's just incredibly amazing how fast this month has gone. Already in 2020, 24, we've started galloping again. The days are going so fast. 30 days are gone already, but we are here, we are alive. We have so much to be grateful to God for. Our hearts are full of gratitude, and we must always keep gratitude on the tip of our mouth at all times, knowing fully well that it is a privilege and a honor for us to be, alive and well and breathing today. And as we always say on Beyond the Pain live video, we are here to discuss how we can find purpose beyond our painful experiences. And from the beginning of the year, we've been talking about restoration to wholesomeness. And this is going to be the third in the series of this conversation on restoration to wholesomeness. And it is one that the more I ponder on it, the more I study, the more I dig deep on this subject, the more I'm fully persuaded that this is where we really need to look inward and have moments of self reflection, moments of self examination, and check on our innermost being. I like to do what is called heart check. How is my heart doing? How am I doing in the innermost part of myself? Because ultimately, how I'm doing in the innermost part of me affects how I show up. How I'm doing in the innermost part of me affects how I comport myself when I face challenging situation. So the state of my inside is very critical. It is very important, and that's why tonight I thought, wanted us to continue on this conversation on restoration to wholesomeness. And I'm saying that it is a prerequisite for us if we want to live a fulfilling life. If we want to find purpose beyond our painful experiences, we need to experience that process of restoration to wholesomeness. And when if we really want to live life to the full and to the overflowing, as God has ordained for us according to his promises in the word, restoration, healing in our soul, is not optional. It is important for us, for us to be able to live life to the full and to the overflowing. If you have been following us, I had mentioned at the beginning what it means to have corruption in our innermost being. All right, when you have a system, a computer system, and you say that it's corrupt, the software is corrupt, that it malfunctions, and viruses can come into the system and corrupt it. Now, for us, there are things that can corrupt us soul. There are things that can wound us in the innermost part of our being, and in so doing, they make us unwholesome. Even in our words, in our attitudes, in our actions, we are not to, having the togetherness, a coming together in the way we should be. When something is broken and fractured, the doctors, I mean, I work with people who have had amputations. I mean, I'm a bilateral amputee. I have a foundation that supports, people who have experienced amputation, and and we provide them prosthetic limbs. Now, some of a significant proportion of the amputation are caused by mismanaged fractures. When a bone is fractured, it needs to be put together, professionally, and to be that broken bone needs to be aligned and held together so that it can become whole again. When something is corrupt, it needs to be examined. And when your laptop is corrupt or your computer is corrupt, you take it to the technician to examine it. Then they'll run a program to take everything, to counter what has corrupted it, so that your computer can be restored to wholesomeness and you can begin to enjoy the use. We all know that for as long as the system is corrupt, it's not going to function maximally. A bone that is fractured and broken, it cannot function maximally. And that is the reason why, when we begin to look inward into our lives and apply these words, a soul, an inner being, that our heart, when it is broken, when it is corrupted, we cannot function maximally. We cannot experience the fullness of life that God has in store for us. We cannot experience, enjoy life the way we are meant to enjoy it. And so when life experiences break us, it breaks and fractures our emotions as well. Those things that happen to us, that break us, it's breaking us in the innermost part, in our emotions, in our, in our soul. And traumatic experiences, have that power to wound the soul, to corrupt the soul, because what comes along with it. And when we are wounded and it is left unmanaged, it begins to fester. And of course, when something is festering, we all know that it gets become putrid. It's not wholesome. If it's you see that there is a way that people behave when they have festering wound. I mean, if you have physically festering wound, the doctors will put you on antibiotics because it can poison you. Festering wounds can poison you. It secretes toxins into your bloodstream. Now take that to our heart. When we have wounds festering in our heart, festering in our souls, it becomes toxic. It makes the whole environment toxic. It makes us toxic, and therefore, we cannot be the best version of us. We can have all the glamour, we can have all the dressing up, but we are not the best version of us because something has happened in the innermost part. And therefore, any situation that causes a grave emotional distress has the power to corrupt the soul, to corrupt the heart, to corrupt the mind of that person, because it impacts us. Our soul is made up of our mind, our will, and our emotions. So something wounds our emotion, it affects our soul. Now, for those of us who are watching, who are believers, you know that the Bible tells us in 3rd John 1, verse 2 says, "Beloved, my beloved friend, I pray that you are prospering in every way, that you continue to enjoy good health, even as your soul prospereth." Right? This is a prayer that John is praying. Good evening and welcome to Beyond the Pain live video. I trust you are all doing great and that this message is ministering to you and the place where you need it. Now, when the John who's writing this is talking about prospering and being in good health. And he's talking about not only the physical health, he's also talking about the health of your soul. It says that you be in good health, that you enjoy good health. And just as your soul is prospering, So that means that our souls can prosper. Our souls can have can have enjoy good health. It can, and that's why we talk about emotional well-being, because that is all about ensuring that our soul is prospering. And for our soul to prosper, when we are talking about prosperity here, I'm not talking about the accumulation of wealth, right? I'm not talking about that is also one of the definitions of prospering, right? But in this instance, I am referring to what it means for our soul to thrive, to grow, to flourish, to be well, to be wholesome. That is the prosperity of your soul. The prosperity of our soul refers to the thriving of our soul, the flourishing of our souls. It refers to our souls being in good health. It applies to it's about our soul being in a state of good well-being. And so if we are going to prosper in our souls, then when we experience those circumstances that corrupts our soul, those circumstances that have corrupting effect on our souls, that have ability to wound us in the innermost being, for our souls to prosper, then we must go through the process of healing, and through that process of healing, experience the restoration of our soul to a state of wholesomeness, to a state in which it is back to what it is originally intended to be. It is not spoiled, it is fresh, it is healthy, it is thriving. That is wholesomeness. And so, for us as you know, human beings, when we experience wholesomeness in our souls, when our soul is prospering, it affects the entirety of our lives. It ensures that the way you show up under circumstances, it affects the way you act under pressure. It affects the way you react under circumstances. It's people who souls are prospering, who are awesome in their soul, in their heart, in their mind, they respond to situation. They just don't throw up and flare out. When you see people who are, quick to lose their temper, who are given to anger, who speaks brashly, hurtfully, that something is going on in the innermost part of their being. And you see, the thing here is that when we are wounded in the innermost part of our being, and we have not experienced that healing that takes us to, wholesomeness, we're going to hurt others. We're going to wound others. We're going to bleed on others. And when people come into a sphere of influence, we out of what is happening in the innermost part of our being, we bleed out on them. We wound others as well. Wounded people will always wound others. And when we are also wounded in the innermost part of our being, we become emotionally unavailable, and it impacts our relationships. We are in relationship with people, but we cannot engage with them because there is a disconnect in the innermost part of our being. And when there is a disconnect in our soul, a disconnect in the innermost part of our being, we can't engage with people and have a thriving relationship. You have to be thriving as an individual to bring that wholesomeness, to bring that wholeness into your relationship so that your relationship can thrive as well. And there are many factors that can corrupt our souls, that can wound us. Let me just first of all look at it globally as corrupting our souls, right? The company that you keep can corrupt you. Evil communication corrupts good manners. We know that. And it can corrupt you to the point that, even from the inside, you are, or you are not who God wants you to be, who you are meant to be. And therefore on the outside as well, you begin to manifest in ways that are contrary to God's will and purpose for our lives. So we need to be careful of the influences around about us. I was at a conference over the weekend, and during this conference, the convener of the conference was, given an illustration about this situation, how our minds can corrupt our perception of life. It says that a child that is brought up that watches, all those movies about witches, about those really, really heavily dark movies, and compared to a child that is brought up in an environment where they don't have access to such. They don't know anything about witches turning to birds and coming to sit at your windowsill. Said those two children, if each of those children, if they wake up in the morning and they find a black bird sitting on the windowsill, their thought is not going to go to, the one will think and see that bird and say, a witch has transformed into a black bird and is sitting on my windowsill, and go and tell the parents such. And there's another, the second child who has not been exposed to such things will just come and say, look, there's a bird sitting on the windowsill and it's probably hurt or wounded. And for me, that illustration was really so graphic. The things that we expose ourselves to can corrupt us. It can corrupt us in the innermost being. And such influences we need to be mindful of it. If we are in a toxic relationship, it can corrupt us in an innermost being. My husband shared a video. We have a group of couples who come together and retreat together on a regular basis, enriching our marriages and supporting one another. So my husband posted this video of a man on a boat on top of a river. This boat was filled with water, and he was scooping out, the small boat was scooping out the water from the boat, and it seems as if he was about to take the boat out on a sail. His wife was washing pots and dishes by the bank of that same river, and she had part of her body in the river as she was washing. Her husband had his back to her. As the man was scooping the water out in front, she was taking heavy bowls to scoop water from the river back into the boat. And the man kept wondering, and then after a while, what is happening? This boat is not emptying. And the woman would just keep washing her dishes, pots. And the man will take another bowl from her and start scooping. As soon as he turns her back to her and starts scooping out the water, the woman takes another bowl and start putting it back again. And this went on for a while. The man was aggravated. He was angry and he couldn't fathom how come the water was not leaving the boat. He is scooping out, but it's coming in. So he is examining the bowl all over, all over. And the woman will keep her eyes straight. And we began to discuss this and said, what could be going on in that relationship that made that woman to frustrate her spouse? What is happening? And there's so many, scenarios that we could create from that. But one thing is sure, these two people are in a toxic relationship. We don't know what has happened behind the scene that has led that woman to that extent to which she was ready to frustrate her husband's effort. And but the way the man was speaking so sharply and loudly at her, it tells me that something is happening in their home. So when we are in a toxic relationship, it affects the way we behave. This woman is obviously is wounded in her somewhere in there by something, and she is reacting to something, and taking action to the extent that, we asked ourselves, if that man had looked back and caught her, with the way he was so angry and speaking, what would he have done to her? And then we asked her another question. What could have led her to take that risk when she knew what could happen? So there's so many things that can happen to us, but that is happening on the inside of us. And people may not see it, but what we see is our reactions, the way we are behaving, shows that something is in disalignment in our soul. Something is not right. We are not wholesome. We are wounded, and there are wounds that are festering there. you know, um, Resentments, unforgiveness, hatred, jealousy, envy are all factors that can corrupt our soul. If you find somebody who is, who carries intense hatred for another person, you know that that person there, it will show up in their behavior. And that intense hatred will also soil their lives. It will affect them in more ways than you can even begin to recount. Somebody who is unforgiven, they are toxic in the inside of them, and it will manifest in the way they treat others, in the way they behave to others. So all of these things that we're considering, one of the ones that I was really relevant that we may to talk about here in this group is the traumatic effect, traumatic experiences that wounds us in the deep places, and therefore having a corrupting effect on our soul. We've talked about different kinds of trauma in this group before, but I did just mention a few of them. Physical, emotional, sexual abuse can, shock an individual to the extent that it impacts them in the innermost part of their being. And it corrupts their outlook to life. It corrupts the way which they think about themselves. It corrupts the way they view life. Last week, when I was sharing with us on the part two, that we need to have a correct understanding of our identity so that we can rise up against the things that wants to corrupt our souls, that wants to, make us unwholesome. If we have a correct understanding of our identity, as I was saying last week, when people begin to say, things to us that is contrary to what who you are by the word of God, when people verbally abuse us or treat us in a way that is less than who we really are, then we can stand up against it because we have a correct understanding of our identity. But this isn't something that just happened or a button that you can just switch on. It is something that we build up to know, I know who I am. Yes, life has happened to me. Circumstances have brought me to this place, but my circumstances does not define my identity, because I know who defines my identity. And so this traumatic if events can cause deep wounds in the soul. They affect us emotionally. And when they do, it becomes, difficult for the person who has suffered traumatic experiences to trust people, to feel safe in certain places. I mean, you hear people say that I can't go to such a place. I can't be in such a place. Or if I am here, I'm full of fear. I'm overwhelmed by fear. And I don't want to be with certain person. And for those of us who are parents, if our children are expressing fear or concern about being at a certain place or being with certain people, we shouldn't just brush it aside. They are telling us something. They don't know how to say it in full, but they are telling us something, that there is something that is disaligned, with the way they are in that place. So we need to pay attention to such a thing. And such traumatic experiences that, even accidents can cause deep, it's a traumatic event that can cause deep wounds. I once had a client that I was working with who had an accident, a ghastly motor accident when she was young. And for many years, she could not enter into a vehicle and do intercity travel. If it is not within the locality of her place, she couldn't do any long distance intercity travel. Why? Because that motor accident, that incident, caused a shaking in the innermost part of her being that has led to anxiety and fear. And the fear had become so crippling that she could no longer live the fullness of life that God ordained for her. Because there are things that she could no longer do. There are places she could no longer be because she has been crippled by the fear of traveling. And so traumatic events can have lasting emotional scars. They can cause such deep wounds that it restricts us. It does not allow us to experience the joy of living. You are no longer prospering in your soul. Your soul is no longer thriving. It is not flourishing. And when something is not thriving and it's not flourishing, it becomes stagnated. It begins to wither, to wilt away. And these are things that we want. That is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about corruption in our souls, and the reason why healing and restoration to wholesomeness is not optional. It is not optional for us. It is an essential process that you and I must undertake so that we can live the life that God has ordained for us, that we have live the fullness of life that is possible for us, so that we can thrive in our relationships, and so that we can go beyond our painful experiences and live a purposeful life. The life that happens to us need not be the end of our being. But however, if we must have to be acknowledge what happens to us, and I'm going to get to that point where I would share with us what steps that we can take. But I just want to experience wholesomeness. But I want to set this foundation for us to know that it's not optional for us. If we have been wounded, if life events have wounded us, if life events has corrupted the innermost part of our being, if it has fractured us on the inside, we need to be put together again so that we can become whole again, so that we can become wholesome again. And that requires healing in the innermost part of our being. What are the other things that can cause us to have wounds in our souls? Um, Grief, loss. When we lose someone that we love, somebody very close to us, and loss may be through death, it could be through divorce, a broken down relationship. It can also inflict profound wounds on the soul. If it's through death, you grieve in the loss of this person that you're never going to see again. And if it is through a broken down relationship, you're grieving the loss of a relationship that is never going to be again the way it has been dreamt to be. And when there's a broken relationship, there is also the loss of a future that has been envisaged before, a future that has been hoped for before, a future that has been planned for and longed for is lost when we lose, when we suffer from loss, or in a as a result of broken down relationships. And this can lead us, whether it is lost through death or lost through broken relationship, it can lead to a place of, a feeling of emptiness. there is a sense of emptiness. And believe me, I have been in that space where, of course, when I lost my mother, it was like something, there was a hollow is this inside of me. And then when my father also passed away, it was like that hollow was opened up again and magnified. And all of a sudden, I don't have a father anymore. I don't have a mother anymore. And I mean, no, I can't just pick up the phone and call my parents. I can't do this. I was just thinking of all the things that I couldn't do again. I can't do this again. I can't do that again. There's a change in the normal pattern. And, I had to consciously begin to investigate and examine my innermost being and say, okay, you're grieving. It's okay to grieve. But but there is also a time of healing from this grief. And there is a journey to heal from these losses. Otherwise, when we don't heal from these losses, it can leave a lasting imprint on our souls. It makes us question ourselves, and especially when it is a loss through broken relationship. We begin to question ourselves. Oh, what did I do to contribute to this? What could I have done better? Or I mean, if it's an abusive relationship, there is a loss of identity. There is a loss of self-esteem and confidence, of self-confidence, and all of this can have lasting imprint on our soul, and it requires us to embark on a journey of healing. Let me take one more. Um, um, Betrayal, a betrayal of trust, a friend that you trusted, that you have shared your life with, turns around and stab you in the back. It opens you up, and if it inflicts deep wounds. It inflicts this deep, deep, deep wounds. And again, I have experienced that too. It's like somebody that is a close friend stabs you in the back, and you are looking at the person right in front of you because of the closeness, and yet the person stabs you at the back, and it hurts. It hurts. When it happened to me, I had to take time out. I wanted to be alone. I wanted to be able to process the pain, process my emotion, and embark on that journey of healing. And walking, studying the word of God, working with professional friends, so that I can overcome that pain and heal from it. And my dear friends, every one of us can embark on that journey. It starts with, first of all, acknowledging that something happened to me. Something happened to me. I am hurting. I have been wounded. And sometimes we may not even be able to put our finger to it, but people will be telling you, "Oh, you're acting in a way that is out of sync. You're short fused." When you begin to hear such, you're short fused, you seem to be becoming more temperamental, or you're moody, or you are withdrawn from your friends. You begin to see such signs. You need to stop and reflect. What is going on in the innermost part of my being? For many who have experienced rejection, it causes wounds in the soul. When people feel they have been rejected by those that they trusted, it causes deep wounds. And if all we know that when you have wounds on the surface of your body, if you don't attend to it, that wound is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to fester until it begins to, become septic. And septic wounds can lead to death physically. Now, if we have wounds in our heart, if we have wounds in our soul, even though it is not visible for you to see, it can become so fester, can begin to fester, get larger, and then it begins to seep out. That's why you say that some people are toxic. They're toxic in their behavior, they're toxic in their reactions, they're toxic in the way they handle things, they treat others. And when this happens to us, and as varied and as diversified complex as the causes of wounds in our souls, wounds in our innermost being can be, that there are many causes of it. I just, I share a few of them. The truth is, you and I can heal. You can heal from that wound. You can heal from that wound. Healing is possible. I've said it on this group time and over again. Healing is possible. Healing is possible. You can be restored to the place of wholesomeness. I don't even want to begin to talk about what happens if we don't go healing, if we don't go on that journey of healing. But let me mention that if we do not find that opportunity to heal and be restored to wholesomeness, it can have lasting emotional impact on us. It can have lasting, a psychological effect on us. I don't know what has wounded you. I don't know where life has happened to you, but whatever your own unique story may be, whatever your unique story may be, healing is possible for you. And that's why I come here. I'm a trauma transformational coach. I help people to transform their pain to power, to purpose, and to profit, to go through the journey of emotional healing so that they can be restored in the innermost places of their heart to that state of wholesomeness where they can thrive and flourish again. And so that when your soul begins to prosper, your whole body prospers as well. When your soul prospers, when your soul thrives, when your soul flourishes, because it is in a state of wholesomeness, your whole life prospers, your whole body prospers, and then you can experience the fullness of life, life to the full and to the overflowing that Jesus died to purchase for you. And that's where all of us must desire to be. That is where we must desire to be. And how can we get to this place? Well, first and foremost, this is a very individualized journey. It's a very personalized journey. And so when it comes to the process of emotional healing and restoration to wholesomeness, it's a one-on-one, because each person's story differs. What caused their story, what caused their wounding differs. And therefore, the approach in dealing with each of them differs. It's individualized. However, there are some general principles. And one of them is, first of all, to acknowledge your pain. You have suffered from a traumatic experience. You have suffered from a painful experience. You have suffered from an event that wounded you deeply, and you know it. You are hurting in the innermost part of you. You see a change in the way you behave towards people. It is time to seek help. It is time to seek help. Whether that trauma happened in the past and you thought that you have gone beyond it, many people tend to sweep their the traumatic experiences under the carpet because of the shame that may be attached to it, because of the guilt that may be attached to it. But the truth of the matter is that when we sweep things under the carpet, they never go away. They gather there, they begin to fester, and after a while, the whole room will have an odor. And you'll be wondering what is smelling, because something is putrefying under the carpet. And that's what happens to emotional pain and traumatic experiences when we don't heal from them and experience a restoration to a state of wholesomeness. Those things stay under the ground there, festering and putrefying And the fragrance that comes out of us is a very bad odor. And it shows up in our character. It shows up in our behavior. It shows up in our attitude. And so, friends, first and foremost, we must acknowledge the presence of a wound. We must acknowledge, and be willing to admit that this thing happened to me. I need help. I can't handle it on my own. I need help. I need support. And if you are that person listening to me now or later on, I want to encourage you to reach out. Send me a DM. Let's talk about what is possible. Another step that we must take is to, what we talked about last week, understand your true identity, and to understand that what happened to you is not your identity. It happened to you. That is it. It happened to you. And like I have my dear friend always says, what did not kill you must not bury you. And a friend actually said, recently, and it was really very amusing to hear that what if we change it happened to me to it happened for me? That means it becomes an opportunity for me to step on it. It becomes a springboard that I can step on and move to another level. That there are things that can mine from this experience that makes it beneficial for me in the long term. Yes, there are some circumstances that you will say that, oh, no, 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 no. That cannot, there's nothing beneficial that can come out of this. But the truth is that the Bible tells us that God works all things together for good. In that situation, there will be lessons that you can learn that becomes something that you can mine out of it. And as like I help people to do, there are ways you can transform that pain. When we begin that journey, that you can transform that pain into something that becomes useful, that becomes meaningful and significant. I have transformed many of my painful experiences into purpose. I'm here today because of the transformation of a painful experience. When I started my career, I didn't start out as a trauma coach. I didn't start out as a transformational coach. I started my professional career as a nutrition scientist in working, helping to manage the problem of malnutrition in developing countries. But life happened to me. And when life happened to me, it wounded me. It broke me. It shattered my life into pieces. But thank God for his grace that gathered all the pieces, all the fragments together. And the gold of grace has been infused along the line of my brokenness. And all the pieces have been put together, restored to wholesomeness, restored to wholeness, to create a new version of me. I am a better version of me than I was before. So embracing God's love for us, understanding our identity, embracing God's love and forgiveness. Many of us need to forgive ourselves. We need to forgive ourselves of what happened in the past so that we can let go. And of course, how do you forgive yourself if you don't first accept God's forgiveness for you? And for some, it might be your painful experiences occasioned by your own wrong decisions or wrongful act. Then you need to, recognize that and ask God to forgive you so that you can move on with your life beyond that. For some, what happened to us is as a result of the wrongful action of others. And in this instance, we need to accept God's love for us and believe that God loves me as I am. But his love never leaves me the way it found me. The fact that somebody did this to me, it does not mean that God no longer cares about me. No, that is the lie that the enemy wants you to believe. So we must be ready to embrace God's love for us and his forgiveness as well, and begin to learn the truth about you. And so what I'm going to do in our next section, as we do a concluding part to restoration to wholesomeness, is to walk us through some of these steps and what it will entail. And then, if you find yourself in that place that you really want to experience this for yourself and you need help, then you can reach out and you can go through this in more details. But let me emphasize what I said to us at the beginning. It is not optional for us to consider healing and restoration to wholesomeness when we have been wounded. It is a prerequisite, it is an essential step that we must take if we want to experience the fullness of life that God has in mind for us. If we want to live a purposeful life, then you cannot live purposefully in the place of brokenness. You cannot live purposefully in the place of woundedness. You cannot live to the fullness of the fullness of who you are, the fullness of what you are capable of, to the fullness of your potential, if you are broken and wounded on the inside. And that's why this is so critical. I pray that that you experience good health, even as your soul prospers. My dear friends, your soul needs to prosper for the entirety of you to be in good health. Good health is spirit, soul, and body. Good health is physical, it's emotional, it is environmental, it is spiritual. So there are many dimensions to it. And if we are not well in one part of us, it affects the other parts of us. So, friends, tonight, I will leave you with this to ponder on and consider the application of it for you and what you want to do with what you have heard tonight. Restoration to wholesomeness is not optional if you want to be the best version of you, if you want to experience and live your life to the full and to the overflowing, if you want to live in the fullness of God's purpose for your life, you must heal in the innermost being and be restored to the state God originally intended for you to be at. And that is a place of wholeness and wholesomeness. My dear friends, if you fall into that category of one who has been wounded deep in the soul, and you want to embark on this journey to wholesomeness, to wholeness, please don't feel free to reach out. And if you have questions, feel free to post it under the video or send it by DM. My prayer for you is the same prayer that John prayed in 3 John chapter 1, verse 2. And I'm going to pray it again for you. Beloved friend, I pray that you are prospering in every way. Beloved friend, I pray that you are prospering in every way, and that you continue to enjoy good health, just as your soul is prospering. I pray that you are prospering in every way, and that you continue to enjoy good health, just as your soul is prospering. And remember, we say prospering is not just acquisition of wealth. Prospering is your soul. It's your soul thriving. It's your soul flourishing. Prospering in your soul is your soul thriving, and it's your soul flourishing, and it is your soul being in a good state of well-being. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'll see you again next week, Tuesday, as God gives the grace and strength. In the interim, let your soul receive healing so that it can prosper. Have a sit down with you. Reflect on what you've heard tonight and to have a moment of self-examination. And then, where are those areas of my life that I'm not thriving and flourishing because something is amiss in the innermost part of my being? Then take that step to acknowledge what happened to you and seek help. And sometimes you may need to seek professional help. When you do seek help or you need help, you can feel free to reach out to me. God bless you and good. Have a good night's rest and go thrive and prosper and flourish in all that you do in every way. God bless you. Bye for now.